In 2004, Panasonic released a camera that was too cool for school. A camera that is quite possibly the first retro rangefinder inspired camera, way before the Fuji X100 ever hit the market. A camera with an amazing 28 to 90 millimeter Vario Summicron zoom lens. A camera that takes beautiful, crisp, and very distinctive photos and is still a blast to use. A camera that was also released as a beautiful Leica twin. But unfortunately, Panasonic never re-released these two camera legends in their proper form. But if there were ever cameras that Panasonic should release for the modern day digital world, it would be these two camera legends. Today you will find out everything you need to know about these two awesome camera legends, and I will also tell you of another camera legend that will give you the same vibe for a lot cheaper, because now it can be told. Hey, what is going on, you guys? Sam from CameraLegend.com. I am down here today in the beautiful Drogs Neck section of the Bronx, New York, St. Patrick's Parade 2024, and the camera that I'm using today is one of the oldest in my collection. This is a fantastic camera. This camera is the Panasonic Lumix DMC-LC1, otherwise known as Leica Digilux 2. Is it still any good? Let's take some shots at the parade today. Now, one thing you awesome and educated camera geeks will notice right away is that this camera just looks and feels like a proper camera. You know, it looks like a rangefinder, but it is actually a rangefinder inspired Digicam. It's a digital point and shoot, pretty much. But no doubt the looks do have a lot to do with its appeal. But the beauty of this camera is more than just skin deep. So let me tell you guys a little bit more about this amazing camera. This camera also has a viewfinder, EVF. It's old school, so it's not very high resolution, but it's there if you need it, especially for bright days when you can't see the LCD. So everything about this camera is a little bit older than you would expect. So. Alright, you guys, so what is it about this 5 megapixel Digicam from the early 2000s that keeps it a cult classic? Well, let me talk to you guys about the heart and soul of this camera, okay? So the heart of this camera is a 5 megapixel 2/3 inch sensor, okay? This is not a 1 inch or APS-C or anything. It's a small sensor camera, but I guess it's like a Fuji X30 or something like that. But it's the combination of this sensor and this magical Vario Summicron lens that gives this camera such a classic appeal. Now, I've always wondered how this lens would be if it were mated to a newer sensor, you know, like a higher resolution sensor. But I've never seen anybody do a transplant on this lens, so I'm guessing that it's not doable. You know, it's something about the design of the camera and the lens. But anyway, all is good because I believe that the magic of this camera comes from not only the lens, this superb 28 to 90 millimeter Vario Summicron zoom lens, but also the combination of the zoom lens and the 5 megapixel sensor. It's the combination that gives this camera the special sauce that makes it a cult classic. So let me show you guys some images so you guys can see for yourselves what this camera and lens are capable of. Okay, well, if you read any reviews on this camera, you'll always hear something like, the lens is superb. And what do they mean by that? Well, if you take a look at these images, you can see that, first of all, the images look very natural. Secondly, the images are sharp. And third, the images have an amazing, almost exquisite image definition. And a lot of this is actually very understated. The images are like just so natural that it's not really in your face. And all those things that I mentioned, sharpness, lack of distortion, and image definition, the lens does this throughout the range from 28 millimeters to 90 millimeters. And as you guys know, zoom lenses are usually compromises, but not this lens. Now, another striking thing about this camera are the beautiful and surprisingly accurate colors. Not only accurate, but just natural looking colors, which is actually quite amazing for a camera that was released in 2004. But perhaps my favorite thing about this camera is that it makes for a surprisingly great portrait camera because of the amazingly accurate rendition of skin tones. Now that surprised me the most. Now, even though the lens is very sharp, you're not going to get a lot of bokeh from this small sensor, but you can get some if you zoom in just a little bit. Low light shots can be challenging on this camera due to the ISO 400 limitation. Okay, one more thing I want to show you guys about this camera that I absolutely love about this camera is this right here. Now, if you press this right here, the flash, and you bring it down a little bit, you can use this as a bounce flash. Now, you know, it's not going to be as good as a dedicated flash, but if you're within striking distance, you can get some great portraits or use it for fill light or whatever you want to do with it. But that's really a great feature on this camera. Now, are there issues with this camera? Yes, of course, with any camera there are issues. This one, I can tell you that it's one thing that always bothered me was that it slipped from autofocus to AF macro quite easily. So just keep an eye on that. That's just a minor niggle. The autofocus is not the fastest, but it's usually good. But sometimes it will occasionally miss its mark, so you got to keep an eye on that. Alright, so now we've come down to that age-old YouTube question. Are these cameras, the Panasonic DMC-LC1, aka the Leica Digilux 2, are these cameras still worth it in 2024? In my personal opinion, in my personal and very unbiased opinion, hell yeah! Hell yeah! Okay, well, for the love of you, the logical, responsible side of me has to step in here and say that it's worth it to a certain kind of geek, but for the same money you could possibly get a Panasonic DMC-LX100, which is the closest modern equivalent, which has more megapixels, does better video, but just doesn't have the same kind of vibe. 300 to 500 for the Leica Digilux 2, so at this point I would just get the cheapest one I can. Doesn't really matter. That shiny, beautiful, sexy looking Leica, it's just the body, it's just a shell, but they are the same cameras, okay? I can testify to that. And in fact, it took me 20 years to get the Digilux 2, and I only got it because I got it at a great price, but now I have it sold. And I want to tell you guys one secret. If you want to sell, well, first of all, never sell a camera that you love, but if you do have to sell it to a friend, because there's always a good likelihood that you may be able to buy it back someday. That's one of my secrets. But anyway, like I said, I only got it for the purpose of this review to do for you guys. You know, it takes time, it takes money to make these reviews. So if you're not already subscribed, please take a moment to comment, like, and subscribe. Help me beat the YouTube algorithm so we can keep this channel growing. and so I can bring you more of the greatest camera legends of all time. Thank you so much. And now, lastly, I want to tell you guys the biggest issue that you may have with this camera, plus I want to give you guys a great low budget alternative to this camera. Okay, so first of all, the main issue that you might have with this camera is some of these cameras, especially back in the day, have been known to have sensor failure. Okay, now I don't know how common that is. It seems like it was something more from back in the day, but I'm not sure. It's possible, as with any vintage camera, that if you buy it, it could break out on you. So, like I said before, try to get the cheapest one possible. All right, now, alternatively, if you cannot find these cameras or you just don't want to pay the prices for these cameras, then a great alternative to this camera would be a camera that you probably already know and you might already have, and it is this camera. This is the Sony DSC-F707, or alternatively you can get the DSC-F717. And what makes these cameras great is, and what makes them related to the Panasonic and the Leica, is that they share the same Sony 5 megapixel sensor. That's right. Now, not a lot of people know this, but some people have actually transplanted the sensors from the Sony into the Panasonic. Now, these were people who experienced the sensor failure that I told you about. And the thing that makes the Sonys great, in addition to the great lens, the great Carl Zeiss lens, okay, this is not the same as the Summicron, but it's also a great lens. But the thing that makes the Sony cameras a great buy is the fact that you can get them for a lot cheaper and they are much more plentiful. So I hope that this video doesn't help to spike the prices back up again, but the Sonys are a great alternative because they also have great lenses. Like I said, it's different from the Leica Summicron, but when you're talking about Leica versus Zeiss, listen, it's just a toss-up, you know? But the Sonys can be found for much, much cheaper. So just try to go with the cheapest one, because this is also an ancient piece of tech and you really don't want to spend too much and then have it brick out on you, right? So that's my advice on these cameras. But like I said, for a certain kind of geek, which I think if you're watching this channel, I think you are, then I highly recommend this camera because it is a fantastic camera that takes really fantastic images. Now, you guys may have noticed that I've not really talked so much whether it's film-like or not. I mean, yes, you can coax film-like images out of these cameras just like you can with most any other camera. But in my honest opinion, these cameras take a distinctively digital kind of image, but in the best way possible. Just beautiful, crisp images, very lovely, lovely colors. Like I said, amazingly accurate, especially for the age of these cameras. And also, they make fantastic portrait cameras also because of the way they render skin tones. They just render skin tones beautifully. Like looking back at some of these photos now, I just find it amazing how well it does on skin tones, especially for a camera this old, where you would expect, like, you know, like off colors and things like that. So if you're one of those Digicam lovers who are buying Digicams for the off colors, the muted, the you know, unnatural looking colors because they look like film to you, well, this is not one of those cameras. Okay, this camera takes beautiful, very nice, almost accurate colors. Like I said, fantastic camera. But anyway, I highly recommend this camera, especially if you can find it. Just try to get the cheapest one you can, and I think you'll be very happy with this camera, so long as you can appreciate, like I said, as is. All right, so thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to this channel. Help me beat the YouTube algorithm, because that YouTube machine does not like me. But I'm going to keep coming back with more of the most awesome camera legends of all time, just for you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, let's take a beautiful early 2000s vintage DMC-LC1 Leica Digilux 2, beautiful, amazingly accurate color image of you guys at the count of 3, okay? Using the nice little bounce flash here. 1, 2, 3. And I will catch you guys next time on the CameraLegend.com YouTube channel. I can testify to the fact that they are the same cameras, alright? So don't worry so much about the color science or whatever nonsense that you were fed 20 years ago. They are the same cameras. Yo, it's Camera Legend.